Welcome to EPL Insights with data provided by Infogol for game week 33. Gareth Wheeler, Andrew Beasley with you as we decided to switch things up and put in more work this week with a massive midweek fixture list presented to all of us this week with a game that could really go on and decide who may win the Premier League. We're working on a Monday. How do you feel about that, Andrew? Because usually we wait till later in the week, we'll record a podcast, look ahead to the weekend, but not only Tuesday, not only Wednesday, but matches on Thursday as well, and some big ones this week on the fixture list.
Yeah, it's rare to have a full slate of fixtures in midweek in the Premier League, but as you say, we've got one here. Manchester City versus Arsenal obviously dominates the conversation, but there's some big games at the bottom of the table as well. And obviously Tottenham versus Manchester United, potentially a big game. Tottenham definitely need to bounce back from what happened yesterday as we record this. So, some interesting games for us to talk through, certainly.
I mean, certainly we can build this as the City v Arsenal podcast, but there's much more to dig into. There is one familiar voice, familiar face who's missing from this week's podcast, and it's Jake Osgathorpe. And we want to congratulate Jake and his wife. They welcomed to the world a baby girl, Lily, last week, and we're thrilled for Jake. He's going to take a couple weeks off, get his bearings. As any new father is aware, it takes some time to adjust. I was messaging back and forth with him on the weekend, and he had a great week in terms of his plays on last week's podcast. So with the baby in one arm, he's staring at his picks out of his other eye. So I think he's already hit his groove, Andrew. He's already right in the mix. So we're all thrilled for him here on this podcast and at Pinnacle. So congratulations to Jake.
Yeah, it's really great news for him, and obviously it gives me a chance to come and see how I can get on with the Premier League, mainly do the Champions League pods. But no, I'm looking forward to this. I didn't have too bad a weekend just gone, so have to see what we can dig out for this midweek set of games.
Andrew, you're a pro's pro. You're going to jump right on this moving train, and we're looking forward to this week's podcast. So let's dig in right away. But before we take a look ahead, let's take a look back to game week 32 and what transpired. I mean, it was another really good week of games. One of the matches of the season, it was Arsenal playing to a 3-3 draw with Southampton. There were twists and turns along the way. Twice Southampton led by 2 goals in that one. Ahead of time on Pinnacle, the draw played at 6:26. 6 or more goals. You could have made that play at Pinnacle as well. Plus 802. Both teams at the end. I'm not sure, Andrew, whether they were both deflated because the point really didn't do much for either, or they're just simply out of gas. Like both teams left it all in the field. They showed their strengths, they showed their flaws, and everything in between.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously Southampton no doubt would have taken a point beforehand, but to be 2-0 and 3-1 up, really, you've got to want to see that out. And obviously for Arsenal, it's just sort of a continuation of their recent form. I mean, you look at their last 10 games, their record of 7 wins and 3 draws in that spell is pretty good. 10 games since they last faced Manchester City and lost. But of course, with these 3 draws coming as they have, both in a row and also the manner of them, throwing away 2-goal leads twice and having to battle back against the team bottom of the division, obviously it feels a lot more deflating than if these draws had been sort of spaced out in amongst the wins rather than coming in a row. I mean, I saw it was only the 4th match this season in which one team had at least 17 shots more than the other and it ended in a draw. But then City did that to Brentford and Chelsea did that to Aston Villa and both lost. So, it is possible for that sort of thing. But it's sort of one of those results that most teams get at some point in the season where you have to come from behind, perhaps unexpectedly and stuff like that. But it's just the worst possible timing. I mean, I knew at the end of last week I'd be coming on the pod this week talking about the City Arsenal game and sort of thinking, well, we could say, well, Arsenal will have beaten Southampton. We know that will have happened, and of course it didn't. I thought they would. I'm sure most people did. So not just a bad result, but the timing is pretty terrible, really.
I had a good week last week, but I was on Arsenal on the handicap in the first half, and when they concede within the first minute of the game and they're down 2-0. That was the only thing that was unfortunate because to the neutral viewer of the game, it was thrilling to watch. It's just, it was very difficult to go into that game in a game that featured first versus worst, to back the underdog in this game. If you were on the overs, then not a problem whatsoever. I felt very similar with what played out at Anfield. Again, I was on a first half spread. I just followed that lead. No goals in the first half between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. In the second half, it all went off. What do you make of what we saw at Anfield between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest? I know you keep a keen eye on Liverpool. No one better in terms of deciphering what to make of them. In terms of home games, I mean, they've been a pretty convincing side. That was anything but a convincing performance.
Yes, it was a strange one. As you say, they have been pretty reliable at home this season, and they did get the job done. But I think it's interesting. You look at Nottingham Forest; they love to pack their own defensive box, block a lot of shots, but that in turn leads to a lot of set plays. And Liverpool obviously scored all 3 goals from set plays. They had 13 shots from set plays, which is the most in a league game since at least 2017. I haven't got the info further back than that. It could be a lot longer than that. So that was quite unusual. But obviously, they made the most of the set pieces. And whilst there was a touch of misfortune with the 2 goals they conceded, they were both deflected. The second goal deflected twice. They were a little bit unlucky. You know, a sort of newly promoted team in the relegation zone shouldn't be causing such panic with some long throws, but that is what happened. And you know, last season this back four of Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Konate, and Van Dijk was largely unstoppable. And they haven't played together too often this season, but obviously they're, you know, another game where they were together on Saturday and they conceded twice. So you just don't know what to expect, really. I mean, you could generally say Liverpool are good at home and bad away, but yeah, it was just another game this season where you could have kind of had any outcome, and you know, Liverpool might have not been able to complain about it, really.
The biggest surprise, Nottingham Forest had scored 5 goals away from home on the season coming into that game. Go to Anfield and score 2. Go figure. The result of the weekend was from St. James's Park on Sunday. The game was over after 21 minutes as Newcastle rushed out to a 5-goal lead through 21 minutes over Spurs. It ended in embarrassment, a 6-1 final. 6 or more total goals played on Pinnacle at plus 1174. 5 or more Newcastle goals at plus 2563. Look, the Spurs side has been anything but convincing, Andrew. But a result like this, a Newcastle side coming off a loss in their game prior against Aston Villa, to come out with this kind of performance, I mean, this had to be the shock result. Maybe not the fact that Newcastle won. Both Jake and I were backing them to win. They're a superior side, but it's the manner of how.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had Newcastle to win an over 2.5 goals at plus 175, so that was good. I just didn't expect it to be effectively settled inside 10 minutes. That bet would basically be in the bank. So I mean, it was good from that perspective. But yeah, I guess with hindsight, it was probably a good fixture for Newcastle coming on the back of their Aston Villa loss, because obviously Tottenham are in a bit of a state at the moment. You know, I noticed earlier Newcastle haven't finished above Spurs since 2004, but they're obviously going to this year, and it's hard to see how Spurs will finish above them in the near future with all the sort of confusion there, and obviously Newcastle and the backing they now have. You know, it's not a sort of shifting of the sands purely on that one game, but I mean, yeah, the teams look like they're heading in massively opposite directions at the moment, and it's got to be massively concerning for Spurs fans that they were just ripped apart, as we say, sort of basically done in 20 minutes, if not in 10 minutes. So yeah, obviously a big game for them with Man United this week, and I think that's a very tough game to call.
You just need to look at the managerial position, stability, and how, and whatever's going on at Spurs, it's not doing the trick. It was just an 8-match fixture list with the FA Cup games being played on the weekend. Did anything else stand out to you that played out? Leicester City, man, they needed a victory. This could be a decent stretch of games for them to save their Premier League lives. West Ham have all of a sudden found some form. Is there anything else that stood out to you from last game week?
Yeah, I think the Leicester win was probably the biggest result at that end of the table. Obviously, I mean, it was their second easiest fixture based on opposition sort of points per game record between then and the end of the season. They've also got Leeds and Everton this week, and then 4 games against teams who probably won't have much to play for. So I think if they've sort of turned their ship around a little bit, and I do think Dean Smith was a good appointment, then getting on that road with a win was massive for them. I think Everton, not necessarily the worst result for them, but it's looking very difficult for them. Only one away win all season. They've only got one home game left against a team who's not in the top three. And obviously they've got Leicester away this weekend. We'll talk about the weekend games in another show, but depending on what happens this midweek, that could be a huge game for Everton, and they've not really looked capable of winning away. I think it's 3 away wins since the start of last season, never mind this season. So, perhaps not a surprise they didn't beat Palace, and perhaps not a terrible, terrible result. But obviously Palace, without much to play for, it was possibly one they had to be looking for more than a point from.
They did have Calvert-Lewin back in the side, but still struggling to score some goals. And after such a bright start with Sean Dyche at the helm, just have maybe slid into neutral just a little bit. So that was a picture of what played out last weekend. We have a full 10 games to be played over the next 3 days. So let's get into it, starting with our feature 5, and then we'll go rapid fire for the other 5 games of the fixture list. Let's start with Tuesday. Is Aston Villa and Fulham. Villa coming off a very tough game. It's always difficult to go to Brentford, come away with the result. They didn't lose. They came away with a 1-1 draw. A late goal in the 87th minute gave them a point in that match. 2.40 XG to 1.89 according to Infogol in that game. So the win streak ends, but Villa still undefeated in 9, and they've been first to score in 9 of their last 10 games. They're still very much in the fight for European competition next season. They're 2 points back of 5th place Spurs, 1 point better than Liverpool, and 2 points better than Brighton. But both Liverpool and Brighton have multiple games in hand. Difficult schedule upcoming for Villa as well. At United, at Wolves, Spurs, at Liverpool, and Brighton to finish the season. So you have to think they're circling this one as a should or want to come away with the full 3 points. 4 straight wins at home coming into this one for Aston Villa. Overall 9-2-5 on the season. Emi Martinez, the goalkeeper, left the game against Brentford, was feeling ill, but he should be able to go on Tuesday. For Fulham, they've turned things back around. Back-to-back wins after beating Leeds 2-1. Harry Wilson has scored goals in back-to-back games as well. They're on 45 points in 9th place. They're not going to challenge for European football. At least it doesn't look like it. But important to them, they're 6 points better off than Chelsea. No clean sheets in 7. They played over to the 2.5 goal total in 6 of 7. Both teams of scorers played in 4 of 5. And they've been the first to score in 4 of 5 as well. Away, they've been okay. 6-2-7, 21 goals scored and 20 against. But the expected goal differential, according to Infogol, minus 11.8. They just simply give up a lot of chances. Head-to-head, Fulham won the reverse fixture 3-0 and put up a 3.14 XG in that game. They were benefited by the fact that Luiz was sent off in that game for Villa. And in this matchup, Villa versus Fulham, they've played over the 2.5 goal total in 4 of 5. All right, Andrew, let's kick things off. How do you feel about this game? Villa are the favorites coming in, and I'm assuming that's rightfully so.
Yes, I think so. I'm not sure I'd be going just on a straight bet on them at minus 127. But yeah, they are. I think they are rightfully favourites for this. I mean, they've got 4 clean sheets in a row at home. Didn't allow more than 0.6 expected goals in any of those games. They've also scored 2 or more in 6 of their last 7 at home. And when you look at their home record this season, they've only significantly lost the XG battle 4 times, and 3 of them were to Arsenal, City, and Liverpool. So they've been very good in this sort of fixture. As you rightly say as well, the last 4 meetings have all paid out on over 2.5 goals. I'm not on this podcast every week, but I try and listen every week. Obviously, Fulham and the overs has been a sort of a running theme of the season.
Yes.
You guys highlighted it last week before the Leeds game, and I'd already thought the same, and that one came in. So probably thinking similar here, to be honest, over 2.5 goals, minus 106, I think, or probably Villa to win and over 2.5 goals at plus 196 looks like a good one to me. Fulham, as you say, have sort of turned it back around. They have overperformed against their underlying numbers this season. But they're one of those teams, they just seem to keep doing that. It's doesn't seem to be a fluke that they're doing that. They carry a goal threat from various different players. They've lost Mitrovic due to his suspension, and it hasn't harmed them too much. I assumed that it would, and it hasn't really. So I think we're safe to go with goals in this one.
Yeah. Welcome to the podcast, or welcome back to the podcast, Andrew, because I feel the same way. Over 2.5 at -107 seems the best play for me. I think that Villa can win this. I think you're getting a little bit more juice this week. Isn't it funny? You take Mitrovic out of the team and they can still score goals. It's like under Marco Silva, I really like the way that Fulham play. And I think they can play loose now heading home in the season. They're safe. They have a successful season. They want to finish top of the table. They want to finish ahead of Chelsea. I think they can play aggressive attacking football. And I think that sets up nicely for Aston Villa as well, a team that I really like their attacking processes over recent weeks. Unai Emery at Villarreal was kind of known for being a very good defensive coach, but this team's very good from an attacking perspective as well. They lose Leon Bailey. They kind of don't skip a beat. Just I like the way that this team's playing, particularly at home. Ollie Watkins has come good. It just seems over is the play in this one for me. So unless you have anything else to say on this one, we can just both, put in those plays and we can move forward to the next fixture. And let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good to me. Yeah, let's carry on.
Nottingham Forest, they're back at home and they're facing Brighton. It was a wild 3-2 loss at Anfield. They scored twice in the second half, only to be knocked back within 4 minutes on both occasions. They're 19th place, Nottingham Forest, on 27 points, but there is a road to safety here. It's going to be difficult, but they are just a point back of Everton and Leicester City and 2 points behind Leeds United. They've lost 4 straight games, no wins at 11, no clean sheets at 11, and both teams to score has played in 6 of 8. At home, they've been decent. I mean, this is why they're even in the mix to survive. 5-6-5 on the season, 19 goals scored, and just 20 against. But they're the worst at home for expected goal differential at -8.6, according to Infogol. Defender Scott McKenna, the latest of many injuries that have plagued this side, did his shoulder on the weekend, one of 11 injured players in the team. Brighton are looking for a big bounce back after losing to Manchester United in the FA Cup semifinal. They went down in pens. They were very good in that game, though, arguably the better side against United at Wembley. And their last game in the Premier League was a dominant 2-1 victory away at Chelsea. They played the fewest games at just 29 on the season, 4 points behind Spurs in 8th with 3 games in hand on them. They're also trying to chase down Villa and Liverpool too, but they still have to play every team in the top 4 coming home. They're the 4th most away points away from home. 25 in 15 with 7 wins. They've been very good in terms of being an away side. The 3rd best away expected goal differential as well at 9.5. That's just behind Arsenal. Evan Ferguson, the big man up top, teenage sensation. He's a big miss. Perhaps if he played at Wembley, they would have been going on to an FA Cup final. Head-to-head, these two sides played to a goalless draw. 2.34 XG for Brighton in that game of the MX. Just 0.23 for Forest in that game. So they rode their luck to a certain degree. So, I mean, file this away as a must-win for Nottingham Forest. But this Brighton side continues to impress. They're getting widespread praise. I don't think an FA Cup semifinal loss does anything to deter from the way that the public perception has just grown around this team. The problem is now, Andrew, you're not getting the value that you were earlier in the season when we on this podcast were loving Brighton basically on a week-to-week basis. Now it becomes a little bit more complicated. So what does this weekend look like for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think you take this fixture in isolation and you'd be sort of all in on Brighton. But as you say, you don't get the value in doing that now. And rightfully so, they've sort of proved their worth. But obviously, they did play an FA Cup semi-final with extra time and a penalty shootout, as we know, on Sunday. And you don't know how much of a toll that's going to take on them because obviously without having sort of European football, they're not accustomed to playing all these games in quick succession. And that's obviously very physically, mentally, emotionally draining occasion to play at Wembley and play for 2 hours and not get a win at the end of it, which, as you say, they sort of arguably deserve to. So that's probably the main thing that's in Forest's favour. An evening game at home against a team that's bound to be tired probably gives them a better chance than they would normally have. As you mentioned, the reverse fixture was sort of a classic Brighton home game where they totally dominated Forest, but couldn't get the breakthrough. It is a big game for Forest. I mean, based on the points per game of remaining opponents, Forest have the hardest run-in of the bottom 6 and their 11 games without a win as well. So it feels like one they have to win. Their 6 wins have come with 5-1 nils and a 2-0. But with Brighton involved, there tends to be quite a few more goals, as I'm sure you know. I mean, they have Brighton have got 6 wins and 3 draws away to the bottom 10 this season, but only 2 clean sheets in those games. But when you look at their away form, I mean, they've won the XG in their last 7 away games. So, as I say, everything points to a Brighton win. It's just how do they respond to Sunday. But I was sort of looking at the available markets. I was thinking maybe Brighton and over 2.5 goals. That was plus 132 when I looked earlier today. I can't quite see it to hand now, but something like that. Brighton and both teams to score was plus 242. I think something along those lines is probably what we'll see here. They should still have too much for Forest, even with their exertions against United, I think.
Both teams to score and over 2.5 right now on Pinnacle is plus 140. So even a little bit more juice to get behind that, Andrew. I'm just going to keep it a little bit more simple and just go both teams to score at minus 112. I mean, even without Ferguson, just there's enough attacking quality in this Brighton side. Didn't come off for Matoma at Wembley. That's okay. McAllister ran the show. Welbeck, a consistent threat. I have no doubt that Brighton can go to Forest and come away with a goal. Like, Forest is just a nightmare defensively, aren't they? Just and that's shocking to me, considering they have one of the top goalkeepers in terms of performance in Keylor Navas. He hasn't been the problem. It's like the chopping and changing of the team in front, defensive injuries, defensive profile. Steve Cooper's done what he's could. I've been on this all season. It's just so difficult to make so many changes, bringing 27 players and expect them to all like come together. And to me, it was wishful thinking. And I think based upon the nature of the occasion, that Forest has to come away with something that I think that they have the chance of finding the back of the net as well. And at minus 112, I'm tempted to play the total over 2.75 at minus 101. I think that that's a decent bet as well. And if you like both teams to score in Brighton, then you might as well make the play that Andrew kind of recommended for Brighton to win and over the total. But I'll just stick with both teams to score at minus 112 in this one and see what happens. Perhaps Forest can come away with something. A draw against a very good Brighton side, I think that would be a pretty decent result, Andrew. And they've shown the ability to play some of the bigger teams very tough at home. They did it to Manchester City. They've done it to others. So they can hang in there. It's a great crowd, a great support. So perhaps that both teams to score is the best way to approach this one, at least from my perspective. Anything else to add on this one?
No, I think we've summed it up quite well. I mean, Forest only have 1 win and 3 draws against the current top 9, and that win was against Liverpool when Liverpool missed 4 clear-cut chances. So I think everything sort of points towards a Brighton win, but we'll have to see what they've got left in the tank.
Let's move forward. This one should be a good. This one should be a really good game. It's West Ham against Liverpool. And that's because West Ham has finally found some form. It's taken months, but it looks like they're finally there. A big 4-0 victory on the weekend over Bournemouth, just days after moving into the Final Four of the Conference League. Points in 3 straight after that embarrassing home loss for David Moyes and West Ham to Newcastle. It's moved them from the relegation zone into 13th place, 6 points clear now of relegation. That's what happens. 2 wins from 3, it can really change things in a hurry. They haven't lost in their last 5 in all competitions. West Ham is 6-4-6 at home, 21 goals scored, 21 conceded, but they are a top 10 side in terms of expected goal differential according to InfoGoal. Liverpool coming off that 3-2 win over Nottingham Forest. They're playing some free-flowing football. They more look like themselves. And it's no coincidence it comes with the return of a player like Diego Jota. I mean, he's been great, braces in back-to-back games. Liverpool now unbeaten in 4. They've scored 11 goals over the last 3 games. No clean sheets, however, in their last 3. They played to over 2.5 in 4 or 5, and both teams to score has come through in 4 out of Liverpool's last 5 games. Their last away game, considering their away form as being what's really been in question, A reminder, it was 6-1 away at Ellen Road against Leeds United. Before that, they were winless in their previous 4 away. And the 4 away wins on the season, that's all they've won away from home in the Premier League. It's the same number of away wins as Southampton and Bournemouth, putting into perspective just how poor their away form has been. 20 goals scored, 25 conceded away from home, and their 31.6 expected goals against in just 15 away matches is bottom 5 in that category. Bobby Firmino remains out for Liverpool. Head-to-head, Liverpool won the reverse fixture 1-0. There was plenty of chances in that game, though. 2.47 XG to 2.63 in that game. In this matchup, Liverpool scored first in 8 of their last 10 games, and West Ham, that is, hasn't come away with a clean sheet in their last 14 games against Liverpool. All right, so can Liverpool keep that away form going the way that they played at Leeds? And the fact that they're playing some much better football, in the practical sense, as well as to the eye, it's like looked much better in recent weeks, hasn't it, Andrew?
It has, but I think in this game that the price for West Ham is really tempting at plus 292. I think if you look at the XG data, it should be something more like plus 175. So there's quite a bit of value in that. And I think as well, you sort of look at the recent games between the teams. I mean, you mentioned the game at Anfield. Both teams had a lot of chances. West Ham had 5 big chances, including a penalty, and obviously missed them all to lose 1-0. And you look at last season, obviously Liverpool were in much better form than they are this season. But last season, Liverpool only lost 4 games in all competitions, played 63, only lost 4 of them. And one of them was at West Ham, where they conceded 2 set-piece goals and a relatively simple counter-attack. And obviously being broken up and teams going through the middle of their sort of midfield through their team has been happening a hell of a lot this season. It was fairly unusual last season, but it's been a theme this season, particularly away from home. And obviously West Ham did have that heavy defeat to Newcastle recently, and you can sort of see a world where maybe Liverpool score early and they, go on to win. But that defeat was West Ham's only loss in their last 7, and they've been better than Liverpool points-wise in the last 6 games. So I think maybe West Ham to win, possibly a bit big, but I mean the handicap of West Ham plus 0.5 at minus 101, something like that sounds good to me. I think they've got the tools to hurt Liverpool, and as you were saying, Liverpool haven't been very good away from home this season. I mean, they've only won a few times, and they're conceding roughly 2 expected goals a game, something like that, probably worse than that. So with all of that in mind, and West Ham in decent form, obviously scored 4 goals in their last 2 games, albeit against fairly limited opposition, but obviously they're in good form in that regard. I think West Ham to get something from the game, plus 0.5 at minus 101 looks very good, and I wouldn't be against betting on them to win, to be honest.
Right. I can see a game playing out very similar to West Ham Arsenal from 2 weeks ago. I think that West Ham finally have a little bit of confidence. They're finally showing what some of the pundits preseason were saying about them, rather than the result, because I don't know if you've been able to put your finger on it, like what's gone wrong with Liverpool away from home, why they don't look to be the same team. Look, that 6-1 win over Leeds, like Leeds were exceptionally poor in that game. Really, really bad. Full credit to Liverpool. I mean, Jurgen Klopp said it was arguably their best game of the season. That's saying something when you beat Manchester United 7-0 at home. But it's Liverpool away I just don't trust. But what I do trust is them to score a goal or multiple goals in this game. West Ham might score more or the same amount. So I'm going to go over the total of 2.75 at minus 118. Have you been able to figure out, Andrew, like what's the problem? What's been the biggest issue in terms of their defensive work and how and why they're conceding so many chances? Because I mean, the data is there. It supports it. Like, this isn't a fluke. This is something that's been a consistent issue all season.
Yeah, I think obviously there are inevitably quite a lot of factors involved. I think one for me that stands out is they're not as good pressing from the front as they used to be. They don't regain possession as often in the final third. And we saw a similar thing happen to them 2 years ago when they had a lot of injuries. They have had quite a lot of injuries this season as well. That season, 2021, when all their centre-backs were injured, and it basically destroyed the structure of the team, and they stopped pressing from the front as much. And obviously they've got pretty much the same midfield as they had then, apart from Wijnaldum. And obviously, I think 2 years ago, they could cope with the pressure a bit more than they can now. But with another 2 years on the clock and the 63 games last season, as we mentioned, they can't cope as well with a front line that's not pressing as well as it was. So I think that invites pressure. The midfield can't cope, and obviously the high line they play inevitably then means they give up a lot of good chances, players going clean through on goal and stuff like that. So I think, most people would point to the midfield, and clearly there are issues there. But I think if they were pressing from the front, if they still had the classic front three at their best, then the midfield would be able to cope a lot more. And it's that's the start of it, and everything else just sort of collapses from there, I think.
Absolutely. I think your West Ham shout, it's a decent one. I considered it as well. The only worry for West Ham is I think they're weak in the fullback areas. And if you have Jota and Salah, not even at their best, if they show up the midweek, I think that West Ham, they can create plenty of chances against them. But you mentioned it. It's Nottingham Forest just defending set pieces. West Ham very good at set pieces. At least their profile suggests as much. So I'll stick with over the total in this game, and we'll see how it plays out. Are you ready to dig into the big one, Andrew? Are you ready to go?
Yeah, because we can't leave it any longer, can we?
Well, we could, but people might be screaming at their podcast device or wherever you're listening or watching this. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. It's a potential title decider, first versus second. It's the master facing his protege, a possible treble in the works versus a chance for Premier League glory for the first time in almost 20 years. It's Manchester City and Arsenal. And heading into this one, Arsenal, the away side, they're on 75 points through 32 games. City are on 70 through 30 games. And Manchester City is a goal differential that's 7 superior than Arsenal. City, they're absolutely rolling. They're on flames right now. Coming off the 3-0 victory on the weekend in the FA Cup semifinal over Sheffield United. They advanced to the Champions League before that. They're on to the semifinal where they'll face Real Madrid after getting past Bayern Munich with relative ease, I should add. 11 wins in a row for Manchester City. They haven't lost in 15 games. Their last loss was February 5th at Tottenham Hotspur. Incredible. They played to over the 2.5 total in 7 of 8. They've been the first to score in 5 of 5. They've beaten other top competition with conviction at home over the course of this Premier League season. 6-3 over United, 2-0 over Newcastle, 4-2 over Spurs after being down 2-0 in that game, by the way. 4-1 over Liverpool. At home, overall, no one's been better than City. 13-1-1. 55-0 goals scored and just 15 conceded. Although their XG, according to Infogol, sits at around 36.5, which just shows you how ruthless this team is, especially playing at the Etihad. Overall, a 40.3 expected goal differential. That's vastly superior than anyone else in the Prem. Arsenal second best at 29.9, so there's a significant gap there. And they're fit. They're healthy. Foden's back in the team. It's only Nathan Ake. He's really the only injured player in a team with an embarrassment of riches. The upcoming schedule for Man City, also very kind, with Leeds United and Everton as the opponents around the Real Madrid Champions League fixtures. But they do finish this season against Chelsea, but they're right at Brentford to finish. Two tricky teams, especially playing away from home, just painting a little bit of a picture what the title race looks like right now. As for Arsenal, that little wobble, it continues with a thrilling 3-3 home draw against last place Southampton. They were down 2 goals twice before scoring the 88th and the 90th, courtesy of Odegaard and Saka. 3 straight draws, 3-3, then 2-2 against both West Ham and Liverpool after holding a 2-goal lead in both of those previous games. No losses in 5. However, no clean sheet in 6. They played to over the 2.5 goal total in 5 of 5. Both teams to score has played in 6 of 6, but they've been the first to score in 7 of 8. That stability defensively that they showed all season long, poof, it's gone. William Saliba's back injury has really complicated things. Looks to keep him out for the run into the season and potentially long-term as well. He's going to be out for this key fixture and has proven to be irreplaceable in the team. Saliba has missed the last 5 games, and guess what? They've conceded in each and every one of them. Arsenal still the best away team in the Premier League, 11-3-2, 32 goals scored, 13 against. After this game, next up, at home to Chelsea, away at Newcastle, then they play Brighton. Not a very easy stretch of games for Arsenal. So this difficult run continues. That's what made that setback against Southampton, so devastating for Arsenal in their title challenge. Head-to-head, City won the reverse fixture 3-1. It was a 1.87 XG to 2.42 in that game. Partey didn't play. Jesus didn't play in that game either. City have won 7 straight against Arsenal in all competitions. Their last win over Manchester City in the Premier League came all the way back in 2015. So that's the way things stand heading into this one. It's going to be the must-watch fixture of the Premier League season. So, Andrew, let's hear your play. How do you feel about this one heading into it?
I would love to be able to make a positive case for Arsenal, but I think it's just incredibly difficult with the form of the two teams. I mean, you mentioned that City have won the last 7 meetings. I looked up the last 13 meetings in the league, and City won the XG in every single one of them. In the games at the Etihad, it was by an average of 2.0 XG and always by at least 0.8 XG. And obviously, Arsenal are better than they've been in a lot of recent seasons, but that's a serious advantage time and again over the same opponent. They are the top 2 teams for total goals per game, both averaging 3.5 this season. So I think goals is definitely the way to go, and then sort of pick your play from there. I mean, you could look at it and say Arsenal have the most away clean sheets in the division with 9, but it's only 1 from 5 aways against the top 8 when they won 2-0 at Spurs. The other 4 games that fall into that category, they conceded 2 or more every time. Obviously, I think depending on which model you look at, Liverpool had something like 4, maybe even 5 XG when they hosted Arsenal recently. So if you go on that basis, and it seems fairly certain that Manchester City are going to score, are Arsenal going to be able to score enough in return? I can see them scoring, but I just think Manchester City will probably have too much for them. Not much value in a Manchester City win, just a straight bet. Manchester City and over 2.5 goals is plus 123. Arsenal's last 8 games have all paid out on over 2.5 goals, and with the assumption that Manchester City will win as they're in the better form, then I think that's possibly the way to go.
I'm kind of looking at things the same way as you. I think if you are going to make a play when it comes to the total, both teams to score and over 2.5 at plus 105. That would be the play that I would make. I would like to see something like that have a little bit more juice, to be honest with you, Andrew, than just plus 105 for 2 things to play out. But City, despite playing some weaker opponents, just seemingly regularly concede. Like, they haven't been assured at the back. With all due respect to Rob Holding, just whatever it is, the chemistry at the back, whatever the makeup is for Arsenal, they're just not the same with Saliba and the team. It's very difficult to see Arsenal coming away with a clean sheet in that one. So I think that that's probably the recommended play. But for whatever reason, I think a draw would suit Man City in this game. I know that the setback against Southampton is kind of. Do you think this is a must-win game for Arsenal, Andrew? Do you think they have to win to have any chance of going on to win the Premier? Are you looking at at Mikel Arteta's approach, like making this one a must-win?
Yeah, I think so, because as you say, they've got a run of difficult fixtures. They're also only 5 points ahead when City have 2 games in hand. So I think anything less than a win, it's pretty much impossible. I think even with a win, it wouldn't be a guarantee with the way they're playing and City's form. But it has to be Arsenal win if they're going to have any chance of the title, I think. But I just can't see them getting it on current form.
See, and if you think that Arsenal might win this game, and this is where I'm kind of going with that. If you like Arsenal in this game, and they can create that gap, if they win, they become, odds-on favorites to win the Premier League. The futures play at Pinnacle right now: Arsenal win the title at plus 310, Man City at plus 400. I just can't get around. I'm not sure what would have to happen to see Arsenal win this game. Originally, I was thinking Arsenal at plus a goal on the handicap at minus 103. I was thinking there's some value there because even if City win by a goal, it's a push, and Arsenal need to kick on. I think coming into this game, it's a must not lose for Arsenal for obvious reasons. A draw still keeps their hope alive. Funny things can happen down the stretch. City still do have, Champions League football. I know they have an FA Cup final that's at the end of the season. That's after all these games are played. But curveballs are often thrown, and things don't always work out in the straightforward fashion that we believe them to. I don't think that a draw is a disastrous result for Arsenal in this one. Obviously, a win is preferable for so many reasons, but a draw, I think you're okay with that one. I'm not going to lock it in. I will lock in the both teams to score over 2.5, but I'm tempted at Arsenal plus a goal in the handicap at minus 103. Would you even go close to that, or do you think that City are just that much better for side and the data backs it up?
Yeah, I think they are. I can see your point of view on that, certainly, and perhaps a draw isn't the end of the world. Obviously, Manchester City have an element of fixture congestion to deal with, which Arsenal don't. Obviously, a huge tie coming up against Real Madrid and things like that. So perhaps a draw wouldn't be the end of the world for Arsenal, but they just don't look like, even if they got that draw, can you then see them winning every remaining game? I'm not sure I can. So they probably have to go for a win, and then that obviously probably makes it easier for Manchester City. So as you say, Saliba being out, I mean that's huge for Arsenal, and that could make all the difference. So I see the logic, but yeah, I think I'm all in on Manchester City, unfortunately, which pains me to say it because it is getting quite boring with them winning the league near enough every year, but that's where we're at. So yeah, that is probably what's going to happen, I think.
The other option, if you don't like the both teams to score at 2.5, you can try the overs. I mean, the total set at 3, and that's where the push comes in. So you get a little bit more juice if 3 goals are scored and both teams score goals. You take that push. You need 4 goals for an outright victory. Perhaps that could be in the cards. I wouldn't be against making that play with the total. Again, City, their defense, they haven't been that solid defensively. And Arsenal, I mean, we've documented their problems over recent weeks. Anything else to add on this fixture? Like, there's just a part of me that thinks that Arsenal can get something here. The form of the attacking 4 players for Arsenal, I think it can cause all kinds of problems for that Manchester City back line, like Martinelli, Saka, Odegaard, Jesus. They're all in great form, Andrew. You get Partey back in the midfield. It's just that maybe we're reacting too much to how kind of the games have played out in the last couple of weeks, forced to hold on against West Ham and hold on against Liverpool. And then, having to claw back against Southampton. But I think this Arsenal, I don't think that there's a goal difference between these two sides. If you look on the balance of the season, it's just what's happened over the last couple of weeks, and whether that Saliba loss is just insurmountable. So I'm really tempted to make that Arsenal play at +1. I really am. If we're going to look at what this line would have been, before the Southampton game, if City had won, I think it would have looked a lot different. I think the line has moved based upon that consensus, and City going through basically a walk in the park against Sheffield United on the weekend. So anything else to add on this one?
No, I think just expect goals. As I say, I think City will have too much for them, but certainly back goals, because there should be quite a few, I think. As you say, Arsenal have got the tools to hurt City. They don't keep many clean sheets at home this season. So I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal scored, but I think City will probably score more.
All right. Should be a good one. Enjoy it, everyone. The fixture of the season and a potential title decider from the Etihad this weekend. Let's finish things off in our feature 5 with the other side from Manchester. Is Tottenham Hotspur taking on Manchester United for Spurs? My word. As of recording this podcast, Christian Stellini is still in charge, but who knows by the time that this is published, because Spurs conceded 5 in the first 21 minutes at St. James's Park in an embarrassing 6-1 loss at Newcastle. For whatever reason, Stellini thought it was a good idea to go to a back 4 in that game. It was an absolute nightmare. There's problems both on and off the field. The director of football is out. And really, because of all this instability, it threatens Spurs and their potential ability to qualify for European football next campaign, something they've done every year since the 09-10 season. 7th place in the Premier League gets Conference League football next year, but that isn't even guaranteed for Spurs. They're in 5th, but Villa and Liverpool are within touching distance. And 8th place Brighton is only 4 points back with 3 games in hand. Spurs haven't had a clean sheet in their last 6. They played over the 2.5 goal total in 5 of 6. Both teams to score has played in their last 6, but they've been first to score in 5 of 6. The 5th most points at home, 11-0-5, 33 goals scored and 20 against. Hugo Lloris left that game against Newcastle. Perhaps he just didn't like what was going on in front of him, but it seems like he's actually hurt, and Fraser Forrester will be the goalkeeper this weekend. United survived in pens to advance to an FA Cup final, and it took a lot out of the team, and it looked like they were absolutely running on fumes by the end. It was game 53 of their season in all competitions, and it looked like it. But it was a good character bounce back after character was called into question after the 3-0 loss just days prior at Sevilla. Back-to-back 2-0 wins in the Premier League before the Europa League and FA Cup games, and United have played to under the 2.5 goal total in 5 of 7. 23 points from 15 away. But 19 goals conceded, or 19 goals scored, 29 conceded on the away schedule. It's kind of a little bit more lopsided. Horrible results at Brentford and at Anfield contributed to that. Injuries continue to be a big issue. Bruno Fernandes limped off, his foot all wrapped up. He posted to updates on his status, such an important player for this team. Lisandro Martinez, Varane, McTominay, go down the list of the walking wounded for United. Head-to-head, Manchester United won this fixture 2-0 earlier in the season at Old Trafford. They've won 4 straight against Spurs. Spurs haven't had a clean sheet in 9 against United, and they played to over the 2.5 total in 4 of 5, both teams to score in 6 of 8. So are you backing a bounce back for Spurs in this game against a Manchester United side which is looking anything but full strength coming into this one, Andrew?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one because I think you could theoretically make quite a strong case for Tottenham. If you went purely on the expected goal data, their price to win should be something like -110. Partly because they've only had 2 expected goal defeats at home all season, and they have won quite a lot of games at home and things like that. But they've also lost when they play against the top teams. You know, when you look at their games against the current top 7, they did beat Manchester City, we mentioned earlier, but they lost the other 4. But then you look at Manchester United, you know, they've only got one away win against the team currently in the top 13. And when they've played the rest of the top 7 away from home, they've lost all 5 times. They've conceded 21 goals in total. So you could make a case that, you know, a lot of things point towards Tottenham bouncing back. Just I can't have any faith in Tottenham doing that, just the way that they're playing and just being so open, and the uncertainty surrounding the manager and the interim manager, and maybe they'll get rid of him and appoint a new interim manager. I mean, it's just a mess. And, you know, I don't think their squad's amazing, but I think they're better than they've been showing. So I'm really not sure which way to go on this, because as you say, Manchester United, extra time. We said that about Brighton. United also having that game in Spain last week. They've got the injuries. So I'm really not sure which way to go on this. But I'm pretty confident there'll be goals. Both teams to score and over 2.5 is -106. I don't think I'd be surprised if that came in. But in terms of which way the game itself is going to go, I'm really not sure. What do you think?
This is going to be our first Beasley versus Wheeler head-to-head on this one, because I don't think there's going to be goals. I think that the total of 3 is inflated based upon what happened at St. James's Park. Look, Spurs are a mess defensively, but Manchester United are anything but convincing in attack right now. Like, if Bruno Fernandes is out in this game, he just begs the question, who's going to be creating the goals in this team? A team that on the season have been overly reliant on Marcus Rashford. Like, Martial doesn't really have, he's inconsistent, doesn't provide the final product. Weghorst, Antony's hit or miss, although I think he's been playing much better as of late. I think that United are just a team, especially away from home, they really struggle, and they really struggle to create. So give me under the total of 3 at -119. If it is 3 goals in this game, I can't see it being more, to be honest with you. It's a push. You get your money back. I think a draw here, a low scoring draw, something controlled, something contained for a very tired side would work well for Eric Ten Hag's side. Remember, it's mission top 4 right now. Like, just get to the finish line. They have a 6-point gap on Spurs right now. You keep it there. You have a couple games in hand. I think that's a decent result. I was tempted to play the draw at plus 273 in this one. A team in chaos, playing at home, however, playing against a team that's tired, looks like they're on their last legs right now. I think this one could be a low scoring fixture, an uneventful game. But I understand why you see things the other way as well. Because why would you look at Spurs and think anything otherwise? What we've seen over recent weeks, right, Andrew?
Yeah, that's it. I think if they were just in ever such slightly better form, I'd be really on Tottenham to win this game for the reasons that we've said, not United struggles on the road and things like that. But it's so hard to know what team's going to turn up. I mean, you'd like to think there will be a reaction after what happened on Sunday. And obviously the fans will be expecting a reaction with them playing at home as well for the first time since that game at Newcastle. But I just don't know. I mean, I'd say I think goals because of the defensive issues of both teams. But I take your point. It is hard to see perhaps how United will create too many chances. I think Anthony's not a bad shout. You mentioned him. I think he's been doing a bit better lately, and he's about 1 goal below expected on the last 4 games. So he may be due a goal in that sense. But as you say, somebody's got to create them for him to score them, probably. So yeah. I think any outcome looks possible. I do think goals, but I certainly take your point about United happy with a point and perhaps struggling to score themselves.
Andrew's also banking on Harry Maguire coming back into the team, which always means goals conceded. So there you go, contrasting plays, but maybe not convincing ones for the Spurs United game that's upcoming on Thursday. Let's go rapid fire for the final 5. Wolves and Crystal Palace, both sides just about safe, Andrew. Palace hasn't lost in 4. The strength, the power of Roy Hodgson. And they've won 4 straight over Wolves, but Wolves have won back-to-back games at home over Chelsea and Brighton in their previous 2. I have no play in this game. Is there something that stands out to you?
No, not really anything strong. I mean, the one that most stood out was probably both teams to score no. The last 5 meetings at Molineux have all ended 1-0 or 2-0 to one side or the other. I think Palace look good value at their price. They should probably be more like 150, and they're currently plus 243. They've only lost the XG in one of their last 8 aways to non-Big 6 teams. So I think there's a fair chance that Palace will win, but it's tough to call because Wolves are in good, pretty good form themselves. But I think opposing goals to some extent is probably the way to go in this one.
The lowest goal total set for the week, by the way, it's at 2 for this game. So if you're thinking, oh, it's an underplay, well, it still could go under, but it's set at 2 on Pinnacle. It's very much a relegation battle at Ellen Road, Leeds United and Leicester City. Just really quickly, Andrew, get this. Leeds, no clean sheet in 9. Leicester City, no clean sheet in 13. Leeds have played to over 2.5 in 7 of 7. Leicester City over 2.5 in 4 of 5. Both teams have score for Leeds has come through in 7 of 7. Both teams to score for Leicester City has come through in 6 of 7. I'm going the over here, 2.75 at -106. Maybe my favorite play of the week.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've got written down. I only wrote a couple of lines for this one in my notes, but yeah, that was it, over 2.75. Seems to be the way to go for the reasons that you say. I'm quite tempted by Leicester at plus 214. I think I mentioned earlier, I think Dean Smith's a good appointment, and I think he'll steer them away from trouble. And obviously this would be a big game to do it if they can beat Leeds. But no, more than anything, I think this could be goals galore. So I totally agree with you on that one.
I just don't get why Leeds are being, underpriced for me, or not priced appropriately. Like last week, it was 2.5 for and Jake and I both love the Leeds Fulham over. This Leeds team makes so many amateur mistakes defensively, but they have some good attacking talent as well. I know they're a little bit different under Gracia than they were under Marsh, but still the same players. So I love over the total Leeds and Leicester. Chelsea and Brentford, perhaps this one goes the other way. Two teams that, well, Chelsea certainly struggles to score, and Brentford, the goals are drying up a little bit over recent weeks. What do you make of this tie?
It's another one that's tough to call. I think, the data would suggest you should be going on Brentford, but obviously their form has been a bit erratic lately. Neither side winning any of their last 6 in all competitions. But it's interesting, Brentford have only got 2 defeats from 8 against the big 6 clubs, the joint best points per game in those among the other 14 teams, along with Newcastle. And they've actually got a better record in those games than against the other 14 teams, although obviously this season the big 6 or half of the big 6 is not quite as dominant as it has been in the past. I don't think Brentford are not as good as Brighton, but I mean Brighton totally outplayed Chelsea in their last game at Stamford Bridge. So as I say, I think you could make a good case for a Brentford win, but Brentford plus 0.75 on the handicap, I think it was. If I just double check that, I think is plus 0.75 minus 101. I could be tempted by that, but I don't have too strong a play because I think Chelsea should be able to beat Brentford. I mean, it seems crazy that we're even talking about it, really, but I think you just can't rely on them. And appointing Frank Lampard makes them even less reliable in my book with his ridiculously poor record this season in management. So a Brentford win wouldn't surprise me. I think if I was going on a goals bet, I'd be taking under 2.5. 2 teams that don't score a lot of goals, particularly recently. But yeah, there's no strong play for me in this one.
Yeah, my play is the under 2.5. It's Chelsea. They've gone under 2.5 in 5 of 6, and seemingly almost every week over the course of the last 3 months. Brentford have gone under 2.5 in 6 of 8. The only thing that makes me a little bit nervous is the fact that Chelsea didn't play on the weekend. Their last game was against Real Madrid in the Champions League, so they've had some time. I'm not sure even that's enough time for Frank Lampard to get it right. Under 2.5 at minus 107. Another relegation battle. Well, Bournemouth look like they're kind of clearing. They could get dragged back into this one, especially if they lose this weekend at Southampton. It's Southampton and Bournemouth. Do you have a play in this one?
I'm thinking goals in this one, probably. I mean, Southampton have had 2 3-3 draws in the last 5 games, and Bournemouth had a 3-2 at Spurs recently. What you can say for Southampton, I mean, 4 of their 6 wins have come against teams in the bottom 6, plus they beat Chelsea home and away, obviously, because, as we say, Chelsea not doing so well this season. I mean, this is Southampton's easiest remaining fixture, so if they're going to stay up, and I don't think they are, but if they are going to, this has to be a must-win for Southampton. But yeah, I'd be looking at over 2.5 goals at plus 103. I think Bournemouth probably will win, but I'd be looking at the goals.
Yeah. Southampton just at home, 10 points, 10. Like what? Just 2 wins on the season at home. It's just been awful. But Bournemouth has the worst expected goals against of any Premier League side. I hear you with the goals. I think Bournemouth is a better team. Plus 0.25 on the handicap at minus 112. I'll consider it. No play for me as of right now, but I have a slight lean to Bournemouth in this game on the handicap. If I'm going to make any play at all. And finally, from Goodison Park, Everton, they just need points. They have a difficult opponent, flying high coming in against Newcastle. Everton haven't won in their last 5 games. What do you make of this one, Andrew? It's a tough one, but it's one of these games you just feel like has Sean Dyche written all over it, doesn't it?
Yeah, there may not be many goals in this one. I think this should be a close affair. I think it's interesting. You look at the sort of breakdown of goals. Everton have conceded the most counter-attack goals in the Premier League, and there's only 4 teams that have scored more than Newcastle. And Everton, will need a win. I mean, they probably won't play too open. This could be a very low-scoring affair, but obviously they will have to come out at some point, and that could suit Newcastle. I'm pretty confident that the Newcastle will win. Minus 0.75 on the handicap to get a bit of value at plus 101. I'm pretty sure they'll win. They should be full of confidence after Sunday, and obviously Everton really struggled to score goals, so that could be a bit of a one way to get a bit of value out of Newcastle. But I don't think this is going to be must-see television. This one, if there's probably a better game on the same night, I think, than watching this one.
Yeah, it's a Thursday night fixture. I agree with everything that you said. It's just Newcastle win -128. Under 2.5 at -120. There's just like no number that jumps off the page for me that I want to lock into in this one. It could be one of those very Daichian games where they just grind out that much needed result. It's just in my head, I had it made up. I think Jake did too. Like last month, that Everton was going to be okay with Deitch's manager. They're getting drawn back in. Just the results haven't gone their way. Perhaps this is the game that kind of, puts them into a good position heading into the run-in of the season. No play for me in that game. So that's the board for the midweek fixtures. We hope that you enjoyed. We hope that you got something out of this as well. Andrew, where can our listeners and viewers follow along with your picks and your top-notch insight on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I'm available on Twitter at BaseTuneToRed, as long as there's still a Twitter. I mean, who knows? But yeah, people can find me there. And share all the links to all the stuff I write, various betting previews and other stuff in different places. So yeah, follow me on there and you can see what I'm up to.
I like that. It wasn't doom and gloom. It was rather a question if there is a Twitter. At Gareth Wheeler. And of course, you can follow Pinnacle on Twitter and follow our YouTube channel as well. The odds provided were accurate at the time of record. And as always, please gamble responsibly. Andrew, this is going to be great. Thank you for riding shotgun today and riding shotgun in the upcoming weeks as well. Best of luck with your plays midweek. And we'll do this again at the end of the week, looking ahead to the weekend's fixtures as well.
Yeah, we'll obviously have to take account of all these games pretty quick and then get on to the next set of fixtures. It's a quick turnaround for everybody, the players and for the gamblers. So we'll have to make the best of it.
Plenty of plays to make and plenty to discuss. As always, we are EPL Insights with data provided by Infogol.